To start our weekly reports this evening, we're going to be going through all of the Ukraine main headlines. We'll be getting you guys caught up on everything that's been going on in that part of the world for about the past anywhere between 48 hours, and we'll also be dipping into news from the past week as well, as there's been a lot of significant things that have occurred there in Ukraine. We'll also be talking a little bit about Iran and the situation that's been unfolding there in Iran for this past about week or so. And of course, we're going to be getting into some China and Taiwan news later in the show, as well as a few other topics which we will be covering this evening. If you haven't already, make sure to hit the like button on this stream. It's the best way to get the attention of the algorithm's eye, so to speak. Subscribe if you're tuning in on YouTube. It's the best way to support the channel. It's also the only way to get access to the live chat over in the YouTube live stream. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. You'll also get notified when we post new videos and new content. If you're following along on Twitch, again, those of you that don't know, we dual stream to both YouTube and Twitch weekly. For those of you that are tuning in on Twitch, if you haven't already, hit that follow button. To those of you that have hit the follow button, thank you guys so much for tuning in on Twitch. You guys are always an awesome bunch over there, so to speak, on Twitch. Also, guys, make sure to comment and share this stream. It's the best way to get this information in the hands of more people. If you like this content, by all means, share it with your friends and family. Tonight, in the live chat on YouTube, we have a live poll going again. Tonight's question for the live poll is, do you think Russian forces will take that key city of Bakhmut in Ukraine? And if so, how long do you think it will take? We're currently running that poll over in the YouTube live chat. If you haven't gone ahead and voted in that yet, make sure you cast your vote, and we'll be covering the results of that poll and having a little discussion about that towards the end of the show when we have our Q&A. Speaking of which, if you have any questions or comments, make sure you hold them till the end of the show. At the end of the stream, I take some time to talk to everybody in the live chat and not just answer questions about the war, but also to read your guys' comments as well. For those of you that want to join the community and get up-to-date information on not just what's going on in Ukraine, but what's going on in the rest of the world, make sure to head on over to our Discord server. There's a link to that in the description below. I see Miss Tiger Eye there posting links to Twitch. If you want to post a link to the Discord as well in there, that'd be appreciated, Miss Tiger Eye. As always, big thank you, big shout out to all of my mods in the live chats, both on YouTube and Twitch and the Discord. Can't forget about you guys moderating the Discord. It's because of you guys that this is possible for us to have these discussions here in the live chat. So again, thank you guys very much. Also, the Discord server, we have our Situation Room over there on the Discord server, which is a 24/7 information stream, a channel that we've set up over there on the Discord for this community aggregated news, which we've come to love and cherish so much. So if you guys want an excellent resource for news, not just what's going on in Ukraine, but again, we've started to branch out a little bit more into other topics over the past few weeks, head over to the Situation Room on the Discord server. It's the best way to take a look at kind of what's been going on and get those community aggregated reports. And of course, if you submit any reports to the Situation Room, there's always a chance that they will be shown here on the live stream, as we have a whole segment where we go through those community aggregated news and reporting that's posted over there in that channel. To start us off, before we get into the Ukraine news, of course, we're continuing to run our semi-rocket fundraiser this week. We are really close to reaching our goal of $1,000, which will allow us to send a 155mm artillery round with a custom-written Nemico YouTube message on it straight to the Russian invaders in Ukraine there. And also, it helps a really good cause here. Semi-rocket is currently trying to fundraise $2 million to buy equipment for Ukrainian soldiers. So this money will not only get that custom message on that 155mm artillery round, but also it will end up going towards buying equipment for Ukrainian soldiers that are on the front lines and spread across Ukraine as this very bloody conflict continues to unfold. Of course, they need as much help as they can get. To jump right into it, we're going to start with our main Ukraine headlines for this evening. I know a few of you, I think, account asked what's the fundraiser at exactly. I'm pretty sure we're at like 936. I don't know if that's the exact number, but it's somewhere around 930. So we're really close to the $1,000 mark, and so I think hopefully we should probably reach it by the end of this, either this live report or the next one, depending on how things go. There's a few of you I'd like to thank directly for some of the. There's a few of you in particular who have donated quite a big portion of that to this Summer Rocket fundraiser. To those of you, you know who you are, and thank you guys so much for your generosity. I guess to jump right into things, we're going to get over onto our battle map screen here, so I can start reading you guys the main headlines out of Ukraine. Of course, the main focus here over the past week has been the fighting in and around that key city of Bakhmut, which again, we have that live poll running on in the live chat this week. The fighting in the east of the country has been probably the most intense fighting in all of Ukraine over recent months. However, in the past week, we have seen kind of a pickup in activity in the south of Ukraine as well, especially along the Dnipro here near Kherson. Some of the most artillery shelling has been occurring in this region here in the south. But again, I would like to say that the primary conflict here, the primary fighting here is happening in the east of the country, namely near Bakhmut and some of these other towns in the Donetsk region. The Luhansk and Donetsk region, here along this eastern conflict line that you see here on the map. To get to the main headlines, a Russian rocket destroyed an apartment building in the eastern Ukrainian city of Kramatorsk late on Wednesday, and at least 2 people were killed and 7 injured. Regional Governor Pavlo Kirilenko has said in a report, quote, rescuers, law enforcement, and public utilities are working at the scene to go through the rubble of the destroyed building. It is likely that people are still underneath, he wrote on Telegram, on the official Telegram a page, I believe, for Governor Pavlo Kirilenko. It is likely that people are still underneath, he said. So again, they're still kind of trying to comb through that rubble and that debris, and these casualty counts will most likely go up in the coming days, as we've seen time and time again, as these apartment buildings, as not just apartment buildings, but all sorts of civilian infrastructure has been bombarded by Russia. As it stands now, at least 44 people were killed last month when a Russian missile hit an apartment building in the eastern city of Dnipro. We expect there to be probably a similar amount of people killed in this strike as well, as we're looking kind of the same size building there, and there were people living in this apartment building. Kitty Grundy, thank you so much for the super chat there. Says Slava Ukraine and sign this rocket. We shall. Indeed, we shall. Fierce fighting continued in eastern Ukraine, where Russian troops are trying to gain ground near the strategic logistics hub of Liman. Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Mailar said on Wednesday evening, Russian forces are trying to make gains that they can show on the anniversary of their 24th February 22 invasion. So again, harkening back to the launch of the full-scale invasion, we're coming up on that here in about 24 days, give or take. And so we're expected to see Russia launch kind of a new offensive, and we're going to be kind of getting to that more later in the stream. Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, said a definite increase has been noted in the offensive operations of the occupiers on the front in the east of our country. The situation has become tougher. So not only is there signs of them ramping up, again, I use this word, probably sound like a broken record, readiness level. Okay, so they're shuffling around troops, and they're bringing in new equipment, bringing in new supplies, etc. And so we're not only seeing a ramping up of preparations, but we are seeing kind of a ramping up of day-to-day operations in the east of the country, amongst other areas. So we're seeing stuff in the north of the country, beyond the northern border into Belarus. We're seeing things along the east, and we're also seeing an uptick in activity in the south of the country as well, as I was just mentioning a few moments ago. That activity along the Dnipro, namely near Kherson. A former commander of Russia's Wagner, aka Wagner, mercenary group who fled to Norway, told Reuters he wanted to apologize for fighting in Ukraine and was speaking out to bring the perpetrators of the atrocities in Ukraine in the conflict to justice. Andrei Medvedev, who fled across the Russian-Norwegian border on the 13th of January, says he witnessed the killing and the mistreatment of Russian prisoners taken to Ukraine to fight for Wagner. Again, for those of you that don't know, that's that Russian private military group, which is currently operating in Ukraine, again, separate from the Russian military. They're basically mercenaries. That's exactly what they are, really, is mercenaries. Moving on from that, Britain's Defense Secretary Ben Wallace has said he does not think it is the right approach for now to send UK fighter jets to Ukraine. We've seen echoings of these statements by the US and some other countries as well. He said it was, quote, not a solid decision, adding, quote, I've learned two things: never rule anything in and never rule anything out. Meanwhile, Downing Street in the UK there has continued to rule out providing Kyiv with British jets, saying it was not practical given the complexity of the jets. Again, the concern has been not so much escalation here, but the supply chain issues that come along with supporting those fighter jets. You not only need training, but you need maintenance, you need parts, etc. And for something even like the Abrams tanks, which the U.S. is sending over, they have a massive supply chain, but that is dwarfed. In comparison to the supply chain for those tanks, is dwarfed by this, by trying to support jets, full scale interceptor aircraft, have quite a large supply chain, quite a lot of training that goes along with that as well. So again, if we do see those eventually sent to Ukraine, I argue it probably won't be for some time, and it'll be even longer after that we actually see them in use, if at all, in Ukrainian airspace. The UK statement came as its former Prime Minister Boris Johnson called on Western leaders to, quote, give the Ukrainians the tools to finish the job, including heavy tanks and planes. Addressing the Atlantic Council in Washington, Johnson urged the West to, quote, stop focusing on Putin and focus entirely on Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukraine's defense minister, Oleksiy Reznikov, said he had, quote, frank and productive conversation with France's President Emmanuel Macron regarding his country's urgent operational needs for self-defense. Also, Spain will initially send between 4 and 6 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. A Spanish news agency is reporting Italy is to join forces with France in supplying air defenses to Ukraine. Also coming from French reports earlier today, in an interview, Italy's defense minister said a package of military aid now being prepared by their government would probably include weapons of defense against Russian missile attacks. Quote, Italy is expected to provide the missile launchers while France would supply the rockets, the paper reported. Meanwhile, Germany's Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck has spoken out against his country delivering fighter jets to Ukraine. Habeck, an earlier supporter of his government supporting Ukraine with German-made Leopard 2 tanks, said such a move would probably be a step too far for Western allies, weighing up support for Kyiv's cause against fears of being drawn into an outright war. Now, again, it's kind of like a split down the middle here between it being too much of a escalation to send these jets, and also not practical given the supply chain requirements, and not just supply chain requirements, but the training that is necessary to get Ukrainian pilots into those aircraft and have them effectively carrying out sorties and missions on Ukrainian territory. The U.S. is readying more than $2 billion, with a B, worth of military aid for Ukraine that is expected to include longer-range rockets for the first time, as well as other munitions and weapons. Two U.S. officials briefed on the matter told reporters earlier today. The Kremlin said longer-range rockets reportedly included in the upcoming package of military aid, and would escalate the conflict but not change its course. So again, these rockets that we're sending now are longer than the HIMARS rockets we've gotten in the past year, which at the time were even considered to be, pretty significant range, pretty significant capability for the Ukrainian forces to have, and was a little bit escalatory from a Russian perspective. Now, these missiles that are being sent in now are even longer range. Possibly could be used by Ukraine to hit even deeper into separatist-held territory, or even possibly down the road launch attacks directly onto Russian territory proper, or even possibly Belarusian territory if strikes are sent from there as well. Again, it's kind of hard to tell as of now how the Ukrainians are going to use these new capabilities, but we're definitely going to keep an eye on that situation as these new weapon systems are sent into Ukraine. Norwegian academics, rights campaigners, best-selling authors, and a foreign minister have urged Oslo to increase its support for Ukraine, saying the government must do more to help after earning billions in extra oil and gas revenue from Russia's war. Norway's oil and gas revenues have soared to record levels over the past 12 months as energy prices have tripled after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and Norway has replaced Russia as Europe's largest supplier of natural gas. Meanwhile, NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has said Russia and China's growing relationship poses a threat not only to Asia but also to Europe. This comes as in recent weeks we've started to focus a little bit on the Chinese Taiwan situation in the South Pacific and those tensions as they've been significantly, some would say exponentially increasing there in recent days and weeks. Of course, later in this stream I will be going over a lot of details that we've gotten over the past 7 days here on the situation in the Taiwan Strait and those tensions as they've been ratcheted up there in the region. In a speech to, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, Keio University in Tokyo, Japan, the NATO chief underlined the importance of stronger cooperation and more, quote, friends for NATO in the Indo-Pacific region, adding that the war in Ukraine had demonstrated how security is interconnected. And I couldn't agree with that statement anymore. The situation geopolitically in the South Pacific and the situation in Europe are deeply connected. I even see at times some connections here between what we're seeing in the Middle East and Iran, and what we're seeing in Ukraine and Russia as well. So it's all interconnected on a geopolitical level, on an economic level as well. And so that's why it's important more now than ever for us to be focusing on not just the situation in Ukraine, but these other events that are beginning to unfold in different areas of the globe. Pro-Russian forces have claimed in Russian media that the fiercely contested city of Bakhmut is nearly encircled. TASS, a Russian news agency, quoted Colonel Vitaly Kiselev on behalf of the self-proclaimed Luhansk People's Republic, again, that's that separatist region there in Ukraine, saying, quote, Bakhmut has practically been embraced from 3 sides. An intensive knocking out of the enemy is underway. They are trying, and I am sure they will succeed, to go to the Chasiv Yar area from where intensive shelling is going on back to Soledar. If I show you on the map here, let's get this, I've got to get my battle map here back up on screen. You can see a little bit of what they're talking about here. So you see, and I've been talking about this in recent weeks, that after they took Soledar, again, which is north of Bakhmut, again, and down here to the south of Bakhmut as well, they're kind of trying to encircle Bakhmut and eventually conduct kind of a pincer movement here and cut off those Ukrainian forces from the rear, and they won't be able to resupply. And we'll see a similar situation to what we saw in, say, Mariupol, and many other towns and villages, arguably, since the start of the full-scale invasion, not just on the Russian side of things, but on the Ukrainian side of things as well. This is a common military tactic, of course. The Ukrainian forces in Bakhmut are beginning to get themselves into a little bit of a tricky situation here. Of course, they're going to hold out in that key city as long as they possibly can, very similar to what we saw in the steel mills in Mariupol during the beginning of the war. Slowly but surely, the Russians are making gains here around Bakhmut. Again, it's the reason why we have that poll going this evening in the live chat. Again, if you haven't voted in that, go ahead and cast your vote in tonight's live poll. But Bakhmut is slowly being encircled by the Russian forces. Now, it depends to see how long and if maybe permanently the Ukrainian forces can hold off these Russian advances. They've done an amazing job so far of holding the Russians at bay in and around Bakhmut. You can see the directions of advancement here from the Russian forces. Again, this map is a little bit behind. I would say the current positions of Russian forces is probably a little bit different than what we're seeing here on the map. But the main thing you want to focus on here is this area here in eastern Bakhmut. So you see here this gray zone here. This is in constant contestment, all right? So at this very time, this gray zone here is what you would refer to as no man's land, okay? This is not in Ukrainian control. It's not in Russian control. It's currently actively being fought over. And so they're referring to this little pocket here. When they say about it being enclosed on all three sides, they're really focusing, they're talking about this pocket here and not the entire city, even though what we're seeing now, again, to the north, near Pidhorony, they're moving further to the west here, and so as those Russian forces move further to the west, down here in the south and up here in the north, they will inevitably, if they're continuing to make gains as they have been in the past few days. Again, I should add, with quite a bit of losses on the Russian side of things, they will eventually encircle Bakhmut, and it'll be up to those Ukrainian forces there to either hold out in the city, possibly launch a counteroffensive to break those Russian lines so that they can't be encircled. Again, only time will tell how that situation pans out in Bakhmut. The Kinburn Peninsula, a strip of land that protrudes from the southern side of Kherson Oblast on the left bank of the Dnieper River, is in, quote, the gray zone, with neither Ukrainian or Russian military fully in control of the territory, according to Ukraine state broadcaster Suspline. So again, if I go back to my battle map here and we scroll down to Kherson, we can see what they are talking about here. So these areas here, these peninsulas down here near Kherson, are currently being contested between the Ukrainian and Russian forces. There's a lot of this area here that has seen what some would say is the most active artillery shelling in recent months. In just the past few days here, we've seen an intense uptick in shelling in the conflict here near Kherson. There's a couple theories floating around that either, it's the Russians softening up the west bank of the Dnieper in hopes of possibly launching their own offensive in the coming days, or it's possible that they are simply trying to bombard the west bank of the Dnieper and try to damper Ukrainian morale as to thwart a possible counteroffensive from Ukraine. So again, it's something we'll have to keep an eye on closely here in the coming weeks. But things have definitely begun to ramp up. I know in recent weeks, when I give these reports, I often referred to the lines down here as stagnant, but one would say, especially around Kherson, and in some of these areas here along the Dnieper River, things have begun to heat up quite a lot in recent days. All right, getting back to my main headlines here. A UK Ministry of Defence intelligence update said recent days have been some of the most intense shelling of the conflict along the Dnieper River. Quote, this has included continued shelling of Kherson city, the ministry notes, adding that outside the Donbass, Kherson is the city most consistently shelled in the entire conflict. So again, that's coming directly from the UK Ministry of Defence, basically saying that Kherson has been the most bombarded in recent days, if not since the start of the conflict. The city has been absolutely decimated in recent months. Well, I mean, it's been decimated going all the way back to the start of the full-scale invasion, but we've definitely seen an uptick of bombardment there over recent weeks, especially the past about 5 to 7 days or so. We've seen an uptick in the conflict there. The woman leading the Kyiv Tax Authority has been accused of a multi-million-dollar fraud after a raid on one of her 4 homes. Ukraine's State Bureau of Investigation, also known as the SBI, said in a statement that the acting head of the inspectorate, who has not been named, had abused, quote, her power and official position along with other members of the authority. This comes as there's been a few oustings, so to speak, of Ukrainian officials that have been accused of fraud and a variety of criminal offenses over the past few weeks. They've made an effort to kind of clear house of any corruption, which has been kind of a staple of Zelensky's office since he took office years and years and years ago. Um, it's been kind of a staple of his administration to oust corruption from the Ukrainian government. So this is again just a continuation of that. That about concludes our primary headlines for Ukraine. So we're now going to hop into. I have a few individual headlines that we'll go over here. Let's get over to my other screen so I can show you guys here. This news coming from BBC. Oh, hey, the chat's working now. Okay, so from last week's report, we had gotten this chat box working, but it wasn't working, so we weren't able to use it. But we'll be able to use it this time. So when we get to our Q&A at the end of the show, I'll actually be able to bring up the chat on the screen, so that's good. I see Miss Chris 620 in the Twitch chat says, has anyone heard from Mehmet? Yes, we hear from him sometimes daily, if not weekly, over on the Discord server. He's an active member over there in the Discord server, and he's doing well. And I hope to have him on the show again at some point here in the future. So this post here coming from BBC talks about Russia planning 24 of February offensive, says the Ukrainian defense minister. Let's take a read at this article here. Ukraine's defense minister has said Russia is preparing a major new offensive and warned that it could begin as soon as the 24th of February. Oleksiy Reznikov said Moscow had amassed thousands of troops and could try something to mark the anniversary of the initial invasion last year. The attack would also mark Russia's Defender of the Fatherland Day on the 23rd of February, which celebrates the army. Mr. Reznikov said Moscow had mobilized some 50,000 troops for the offensive. In September, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a general mobilization of some 30,000 conscripted troops, which he said was necessary to ensure the country's territorial integrity. But Mr. Reznikov suggested that the true figure recruited and deployed to Ukraine could be far higher. Officially, they announced 300,000, but when we see the troops at the borders, according to our assessments, it is much more. He told the French BFM network the BBC cannot independently verify this figure. Despite some heavy fighting in the eastern Donbass region, the war has entered something of a stalemate in recent months since Ukraine retook the southern city of Kherson. Keep in mind, in recent days, that has started to change, as we've seen an uptick of that activity there. With the exception of the Russian siege of the town of Soledar, neither side has made major territorial advances. Again, I like to talk about this. In recent weeks, we've seen, again, as it says here, kind of a stagnation, but there has been incremental gains by the Russians and incremental gains by the Ukrainians. All right, so it's kind of a tit-for-tat back and forth that we're seeing here, again, from the Russian and the Ukrainian side. KJC, thank you so much for the super chat there. Says thank you for everything, the Omnissiah. From Digit, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. Digit, I believe you just capped off our fundraiser for the Sign My Rocket fundraiser. So thank you so much for that contribution. Moving on, just to cap off this article here, it says, but a Russian spring offensive and a Ukrainian counteroffensive has long been considered likely. The U.S.-based Institute for the Study of War, also known as the ISW, recently said that Moscow could seek to undertake a decisive action and launch a big offensive in the east. Mr. Reznikov said Ukraine's commanders would seek to, quote, stabilize the front and prepare for a counteroffensive ahead of the rumored Russian advance. I have faith that the year 2023 can be the year of military victory, he said, adding that Ukraine's forces cannot lose the initiative they have achieved in recent months. The defense minister was in France to strike a deal to purchase additional MG-200 air defense radars, which he said would significantly increase the capacity of the armed forces to detect air targets, including winged and ballistic missiles and drones of various types. Again, it goes on to give some more details about Mr. Reznikov's comments and some of the other aid and that is being sent to Ukraine, as well as some developments there in and around Bakhmut. Again, the key takeaway here from this article is that Russia is planning to launch a major offensive in the coming days and weeks here. Again, to kind of mark that symbolic one-year anniversary since the start of the full-scale invasion. So moving on from here, we're going to hop into our our community aggregated news and reporting from the Discord server here. I have to get those up on screen. We'll be going through some key reports from about the past week, but I'll be mainly focusing on the past 24 hours or so. Let's go here. So we have quite a few to go through from today. I kind of wanted to start off with our UK Ministry of Defense intelligence assessment. Here we go. We have it coming from user Carreria. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correct, but thank you so much, Carreria, from the Discord server for sending over our Ministry of Defense intelligence update here. Again, this is for the 1st of February, 2023. I'll get it up here on screen so you guys can read along. In recent days, some of the most intense shelling in the conflict has likely taken place along the Dnieper River in southern Ukraine. This has included continued Russian shelling of Kherson City with artillery firing from the east of the river. On the 29th of January 2023, local authorities reported another 3 civilians killed in Kherson, while 2 foreign-owned ships moored on the river were damaged, causing an oil spill. Kherson remains the most consistently shelled large Ukrainian city outside of the Donbass. Russia's precise rationale for expending its strained ammunition stocks here is unclear. However, commanders are likely partially aiming to degrade civilian morale and deter any Ukrainian counterattacks across the Dnieper River. Again, thank you to Carreria for sending us over that intelligence update from the UK Ministry of Defense. Coming here from Seonan on the Discord server is a post from Reuters talking about Ukraine raids home of billionaire in wartime anti-corruption crackdown. Kyiv, February 1st, security services searched the home of one of Ukraine's most prominent billionaires on Wednesday, moving against a figure once seen as President Volodymyr Zelensky's sponsor in what the authorities called a wartime anti-corruption purge. The action, days before a summit with the European Union, appears to reflect determination by Kyiv to demonstrate that it can be a steward of billions of dollars in Western aid and shed a reputation as one of the world's most corrupt states. Our next post here coming from Kayuka. As usual, this is our morning report of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Kayuka took the liberty here to translate it for us, but he only quotes the troop movements and important events and not individual shellings. So that's a nice breakdown here for us. Again, always appreciated, Kayuka. To read this off here, says the enemy does not stop offensive actions in the Liman and Bakhmut directions, suffers great losses, conducts unsuccessful offensive actions in the Edvidka and Novopalivka directions. Last day, units of the defense forces repelled the attacks of the occupiers in the areas of Yomopolivka, Sperini, and Rozodolivka, Bladohadante, Karasa Hora, Bakhmut, and a list of other areas as well. The enemy continues to suffer losses, thus another military hospital has been established in the Nova Ivankia district of the Luhansk region. About 100 Russian servicemen are undergoing treatment at that facility. The severity of the injury is usually underestimated and not recorded in medical records. After providing minimal assistance, they are sent to the front line. From the understanding of war.org, from the ISW here, the Institute of the Study of War, we have a Russian offensive campaign assessment for January 31st. Kayuka outlined some key takeaways for us here this evening. The introduction of Russian conventional forces to the Bakhmut front line has offset the culmination of the Wagner Group's offensive and retained the initiative for Russian operations around the city. ISW's December 27 forecast that the Russian offensive against Bakhmut was culminating was inaccurate. ISW does not forecast the imminent fall of Bakhmut, and it is extraordinarily unlikely that Russian forces will be able to conduct a surprise encirclement of Ukrainian forces in Bakhmut. Russian military command is overestimating Russian military capabilities and advance rapidly in Donetsk Oblast and in the theater as a whole. Russian conventional forces may be replacing expended Wagner PMC forces by relocating them from Bakhmut to the Zaporizhia Oblast front line. The Russian Ministry of Defense, meanwhile, may be attempting to fully supply Wagner forces near Bakhmut, to fully supplant Wagner forces near Bakhmut to frame the traditional Russian military command structure as the sole victor around Bakhmut, assuming Russian forces take the city. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces continue to support ISW's assessment that an imminent Russian offensive in the coming months is the most likely course of action, and further suggests that Ukrainian forces plan to launch a larger counter-offensive. Prominent Russian military bloggers, continue to expose Russian military failures in Ukraine through increasingly public and elevated platforms. Our next post here, again, is the ISW's Russian offensive campaign assessment for January 31st. Wait, that's what we were on. Okay, so I see. I did. He did two chunks here. Kayuka had another list of key takeaways. Russia continues to weaponize counterterrorism laws to justify domestic repressions. We've talked about that quite a bit on the show over the past few weeks here. Russian forces continued limited ground attacks to regain lost positions along the Satovi-Crimea line on January 31st. Russian forces continued offensive operations along the Donetsk Oblast front line. So if we're looking at our battle map here, I can kind of take you through some of these. Whoops, wrong one here. Let's move that back in place. Okay, let's go down here to our deep state map. So again, they're speaking down here near Donetsk. So the Russian forces continued offensive operations along the Donetsk Oblast front line. So in this area here, Russian forces unlikely to benefit significantly elsewhere in eastern Ukraine from their localized offensive around Voldahar. So again, you have kind of the situation here in the north here. Up by Bakhmut, Soledar, etc. So kind of in the Luhansk region. Then you have kind of this separate theater of combat down here near Donetsk. Russian forces are likely prioritizing sabotage and reconnaissance activities over territorial gains in southern Ukraine. Again, speaking to things like the attacks on the Ukrainian power grid, we've seen quite a lot of over the past, I would say 6 months or more here, especially in the past 3 months or so. They've, as winter has come on, they've kind of escalated those attacks on the Ukrainian power grid and energy infrastructure. So they're focusing mainly on acts of sabotage and reconnaissance, more so than these territorial gains in eastern Ukraine. Russian Prosecutor General Igor Kresinov acknowledged Russian mobilization failures in an attempt to frame implementation failures and policy violations as resolved. Russian occupation authorities continue to use youth engagement in education programs to consolidate social control of occupied territories. Again, mainly speaking to the LPR, the DPR, so the Luhansk People's Republic and the Donetsk People's Republic. I would also say probably Crimea is in that list as well. Next post here coming from Pravada, posted by Kayuka. U.S. company offers attack drones to Ukraine for $1. So again, kind of more of a statement here. A U.S. weapons maker is offering to sell Ukraine government 2 Reaper MQ-9 drones for $1. Details: the Wall Street Journal has pointed out that the company offers this in order to, quote, help the country defend itself as it prepares for an expected Russian offensive. The proposal was made by Lyndon Blue, Chief Executive Officer of General Atomics, which makes the Reaper drones, which we have come to know and admire here. You can see one on screen. The Wall Street Journal has noted that the deal would require Kyiv to spend about $10 million to prepare and ship the aircraft to Ukraine, and about $8 million each year for the maintenance and sustainment of the older model drones, which currently aren't being used in Ukraine. The White House, which would have to approve the sale, declined to comment. The Ukrainian government also declined to comment at this time. The Wall Street Journal has once again highlighted the U.S. has provided more than 700 smaller drones to Ukraine over the past year, including tactical Switchblade drones. All right, so again, here they're saying they're sending them over for $1, which again is, kind of more of a statement than anything. But you have to keep in mind it costs a lot of money to get them shipped over there and supplied, and then to maintain them as well costs a considerable amount here. We're talking in the millions of U.S. dollars. Our next post here, coming from Yoroko Izo, longtime contributor here, talks about, again, this is coming from CNBC, nearly a year on from the supposed Russian exodus. Most major companies have yet to withdraw from Russia. After Russian troops invaded Ukraine in February 2022, companies across the G7 major economies and the European Union announced plans to cease business and operations in Russia. Yet by the end of the year, very few had fully delivered on that promise, according to new research from Switzerland's University St. Gallen. So again, I've talked about this a few times on the show. Um, uh, we've seen multiple occasions. Businesses saying we're going to stop, we're going to cease operations in Russia, and then fail to do so, or they'll pull out, and then weeks to a month later they go they go right back to operating within Russia. Again, this is hard on the world economy as a whole. For some companies, it's not viable just to pull all of their all of their workforce, all of their operations from Russian territory. For some, it's very different, though. Some major corporations could possibly afford to pull out of Russia, and it would have more of a damper on the Russian economy than the companies themselves. Post here coming from Pyrotech, longtime contributor. Thank you, Pyrotech, for posting this. Comes from Kyiv Independent. Okay, so it didn't actually pull up the post that I was looking for here. Here we go. I think we'll be able to get it up on screen here for you. Israeli Prime Minister says he'll consider sending military aid, including Iron Dome, to Ukraine. A quote from that report saying, "Well, I'm certainly looking into it." Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told CNN when asked about sending the Iron Dome air defense system to Ukraine. Another post here coming from Pyrotech as well talks about the U.S. Treasury Department has imposed new sanctions against Russia. A number of individuals and legal entities have been added to that sanctions list. Again, this kind of seems to be a monthly, if not weekly, occurrence. As they keep increasing that list of sanctions, it's ever growing. And another evening report. So we got the morning report, but here's the evening report from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The enemy is actively conducting reconnaissance and preparing for an offensive in certain directions. Despite heavy losses, he continues to attempt offensive actions in the Liman, Bakhmut, Advivka, and Novopavlivka directions. The enemy continues to use the civil infrastructure in the temporarily captured territory for its own purposes. Thus, the Russian occupiers use the city hospital of Dniprodony of the Zaporizhzhia region as a military hospital. Medicines and surgeons were brought from the Russian Federation to work at the hospital there. The Russian invaders continue to put pressure on the citizens of Ukraine to violate human rights. In particular, in Starobolsk, Luhansk region, the Russian occupation authorities force people to send children aged 6 and over to so-called Cossack cadet corps for supposedly proper patriotic education. People who refuse to send their children to the specified corps are threatened with deprivation of parental rights. And a post coming here again from Kayuka from Pravda.com. Biden and Zelensky may meet in Poland. President Vladimir Zelensky may meet with U.S. President Joe Biden in late February during the latter's visit to Poland. Source on this is Polish news outlet Dziennik Gazeta Prawana, as European Pravda reports. Details, according to the news agency, is likely that Joe Biden's visit to Poland in late February will be accompanied by the arrival of Vladimir Zelensky. Currently, the cities of Rzeszów and Warsaw are being considered for a potential meeting. Quote, the Ukrainian president will present a peace plan and call for an international conference regarding Ukraine. A diplomatic source in Kyiv told the newspaper about the plans for talks. Details, Zelensky will also bring up the topic of security guarantees for Kyiv, the source added. In another post here, this is coming from Sky News, posted by Kayuka. Russia is preparing for a maximum escalation, top Ukrainian security official tells Sky News. We have a video here to show you, but we also have a little bit of the report here I'll read you first. Ukraine is preparing for a major escalation by Russia, possibly even in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the Ukrainian president's top security official has said. Oleksiy Danilov, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, told Sky News that the hardest fighting was yet to come and said that the next few months would be crucial in deciding the course of the war. Let's take a look at the video here now.
A huge buildup of Russian troops could be seen around Ukraine's border a year ago, amid warnings they were about to invade. Then, on the 24th of February, it happened, with this line of armour moving from the north towards the capital. Ukraine beat them back, but battles are still raging in the east. Now, this top official expects a second Russian surge, possibly even around the anniversary.
Російська Федерація зараз готується до максимального загострення. Вона зараз збирає всі можливі і неможливі сили, які в неї є, проводить зараз навчання, тренування. Чи буде йти з усіх боків? На сьогоднішній день я можу сказати, що ми не виключаємо будь-якого розвитку сценарія подій найближчі 2-3 тижні.
As hard as this war has already been, 1 year in since the full-scale invasion, in your opinion, do you think that the worst is yet to come?
Звичайно, ми пройшли дуже складний і великий шлях, але я свідомий того, що головні бої ще попереду, і вони будуть в цьому році, вони будуть найближчі 2-3 місяці, які будуть вирішальними у цій війні.
It's why Ukraine is desperate for more weapons. Tanks are coming, and they want jets, but it's unlikely anything will arrive fast enough, though a Western official did say they've not seen signs of Russia planning anything specifically for the 24th of February. Moscow isn't the only one in attack mode.
У нас є власні плани, вони нам зрозумілі, вони не є прихованими від наших основних партнерів.
The plan, of course, is to win, but Russia has the same goal. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, Kyiv.
So there you have it. Our next post here comes from Kyiv Independent, again posted by Kayuka. This talks about that Russian missile strike on the residential building in Kramatorsk. Kills at least 2, injures 7. Again, I like to reiterate those death numbers are not finalized. They're still coming through the rubble there in Kramatorsk, and those numbers are expected to significantly increase as they begin to, again, sift through the rubble and process the numbers of casualties there. I have a video here that shows you some of the destruction of that building here. I'm going to get it up on screen now. Let's have a look. So you can see there, it's quite a large apartment complex that was struck in Kramatorsk. Again, in the latest reports I got, they are still combing through that rubble. It takes quite some time to do so, and that those casualty numbers are expected to significantly increase in the coming hours and days. Another post here coming from Ukrainska Pravda talks about how the Russians are having a hard time finding personnel for their, quote, new administration of Kherson Oblast. It says here, Russian occupiers cannot find personnel for the new administration of Kherson Oblast, which was moved to the left bank of the Dnipro River in November. Source, press service of the National Resistance Center, a quote saying the Russians cannot find personnel to work in their occupation administration in Kherson Oblast. So, in fact, the administration continues to work in its previous way, which Vladimir Soldo, the Russian-appointed puppet governor of temporarily occupied Kherson Oblast, imitating some kind of activity in Moscow's orders that should be carried out by its puppets, the quote there states. Kayuka actually just posted in The live chat update, an update came in recently. It's now been raised to 3 killed at that apartment and 21 injured following Russia's missile strike in Kramatorsk. That's for the latest update. Again, those numbers are expected to continue to unfortunately increase. In our next post here, this comes from the Treasury.gov website, U.S. Department of the Treasury. Global sanctions evasion network supporting Russia's military-industrial complex. Kayuka did a very good job summing this up for us here. It talks about today the U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, also known as the OFAC, imposed full blocking sanctions against 22 individuals and entities across multiple countries related to a sanctions evasion network supporting Russia's military-industrial complex. Today's actions, taken pursuant to Executive Order EO 14024, are part of the U.S. strategy to methodologically and intensively target sanctions evasion efforts around the globe, close down key backfilling channels, and expose facilitators and enablers, and limit Russia's access to revenue needed to wage its brutal war in Ukraine. Over the last year, Treasury has sanctioned over 100 individuals and entities engaging in activity to circumvent international sanctions and export controls imposed on Russia, again, since the launch of the full-scale invasion. In our next post, this comes from Twitter, from Noel Reports on Twitter, an unverified source, so keep that in mind. This shows Russian supporters proudly share this footage, how Marinka is further ruined by the use of incendiary ammunition. Let's go ahead and take a look at this video. So you can see what looks to be possibly white phosphorus or some other incendiary munition here being used in the background. You could really see that in the beginning here. You can see it raining down to the ground over here. If we go ahead and skip through, you can see that looked to be a inbound shell there exploding at that building. That looks mostly like artillery, possibly a missile strike there. You could see on the right side of the screen as well, we saw an explosion there on this building where my mouse cursor is here. It was smaller than this one here, but that could have been incoming artillery or possibly incoming rockets as well. Jake Miller asks, would you like a weather report, even though it's been a while since I've done one? We would love a Kyiv weather report. I miss those, doing those every live stream. We used to do those for the daily ones. At the end of the stream, we would do our live weather report for Kyiv. So again, you can see continued incoming munitions there in this video. I was hoping we would see another clip of the incendiary munitions that they're speaking of. You can see them at the beginning of the clip here. But just, for a second here, just take a look at the destruction of this neighborhood and how absolutely decimated this area is here. But you can see this here. This is these bright lights here you see on screen are that incendiary ammunition. I'm pretty sure this is white phosphorus or another type of incendiary munition being used here. But you can see it causing fires and burning across this back area here of the town. But just take a look at some of these buildings and just how destroyed the infrastructure is in some of these areas. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Our next report here comes from Kayuka again, from Ukrainska Pravda in English on Twitter. This shows a Russian convoy defeated by road traffic. Let's take a look at this video here.
Красавец, просто, блядь, красавец.
that video there, you could see that box truck. That box truck there striking that what looked to be a supply truck of the Russian military here. Oh no, it's a fuel truck. That's what it was. Or either a fuel or a water tanker. I'm not sure. Was struck by that box truck there. Absolutely shut down that Russian convoy temporarily. Our next post, actually, we had a question in the chat. Ukin Atsila asks, do you think that the Iranian support for Russia and the presumed ramping up of pressure on Iran by Israel could lead to a defense production agreement between Russia and Iran? There's been a lot of talk of that. That is definitely a possibility. I'll be talking a little bit more about Iran here after we get done with our Ukraine reports. We just have a few left here for our community reports, and then we'll be getting into the OSINT, the open source intelligence tools, and we'll be taking a look at some of that reporting here in just a few moments. This next video comes from Dimitri, verified on Twitter. Trophy Lend-Lease. The National Guardsmen are repairing and sending into battle numerous captured and evacuated tanks, BMPs, armored personnel carriers, and tow trucks of the Russian occupiers, especially in recent months. Let's take a look at...
Нацгвардійці ремонтують та відправляють у бій численні захоплені та евакуйовані танки.
Let's take a look at this video here, again, that shows some of these repaired and refurbished tanks that the Ukrainians will be putting to good use.
Трофейний ленд-ліз. Нацгвардійці ремонтують та відправляють у бій численні захоплені та евакуйовані танки, БМП, бронетранспортери та тягачі російських окупантів у промислових масштабах. Особливо останні місяці. Цьому посприяв раптовий від'ємний наступ, або ж простіше, втеча рашистів на Харківському напрямку. Нині деокуповані території просто усіяні покинутою бронетехнікою. Українські захисники до питання евакуації трофеїв підійшли ґрунтовно.
Була створена група по евакуації трофейної техніки. В ці, скажімо так, групу входять група технічної розвідки. Безпосередньо це група, яка займається виявленням цієї пошкодженої техніки або трофейної техніки.
So they're talking about here, this group consists of the technical reconnaissance group involved with discovering damaged and trophied vehicles. So their whole job is to go out and find, either captured Russian vehicles or ones that have been damaged, and they're just, laying around, and they bring them back, they fix them up, they refurbish them, and they put them into Ukrainian hands to be used on the battlefield going forward.
За допомогою і безпілотного літального апарата, в обов'язковому порядку там повинен бути сапер. Група охорони – це безпосередня група, яка під час евакуації охороняє ту територію, на якій проводяться роботи. Є в групу евакуації входять як і БРЕМ, вантажні автомобілі, так само туди входить і ТРАЛ.
Серед, так би мовити, чесно віджатої у противника техніки трапляються досить цікаві зразки.
БМП-2. Рік випуску 1992 строю. Це більш вдала модель. Да. Має скорострільну гармату 30-мм, а також, що важливо, стабілізатор танкового озброєння, що дає більш влучне ураження цілі на полі бою. Найбільш цікаву модель – це БМП-3, рік вступу до озброєння ще Радянського Союзу, це був 85-й рік. Але ця модель, саме цей зразок, він більш досконалений і він 2002 року, згідно документації. Ця машина має комбіновану алюмінієво-сталеву броню рознесену. Має більш потужний комплекс озброєння. 100-мм гармату 2А40, 30-автоматичну гармату 2А42 та, як на них усіх, спарений кулемет ПКТ. Вона, як усі вони, вміє плавати.
So he's talking about this model here is capable of going in the water. So it can also change its clearance. So I don't know if that means it has like a hydraulic ability to increase its ground clearance or not. That's pretty cool if it does, though. But anyway, he's saying a lot of these tanks, they're refurbished. Some of them are newer. Some of them are older models. It looks like they've given them new paint jobs as well, which is really nice. Outfitted them with a new camo pattern on there for that's maybe more fit for the Ukrainian terrain. We're not going to go ahead and watch this entire video here because it is 8 minutes long, but I just wanted to give you guys a little kind of preview of this crew here as they refurbish some of these damaged and captured Russian vehicles. Our next post here comes from Rat Lady on the Discord server. This is a video that shows destruction of the Russian Arctic TOR M2D T anti-aircraft missile system by the 406th Artillery Brigade of the Ukraine Armed Forces. Let's go ahead and take a look at this video. So again, what we're seeing here is some overhead drone footage here showing those strikes on this system here, on this Russian anti-aircraft missile system. Go ahead, I just want to reverse here. You can see the strike there. A thing to note is you can see the amount of shrapnel being sent off. If you watch here on the ground and you watch here on the ground, you can see dirt and dust and debris kicked up from pieces of shrapnel coming off of this explosion. You can see there, even a piece of shrapnel all the way out to there, I think. Yeah, right here. So right down here, a piece of shrapnel lands. You could be standing that far away from this and just be ended by a piece of shrapnel flying, at the speed of sound. Yeah, I mean, that's quick. That's super quick for that shrapnel to be flung that far from that system there, from that explosion. You can see there the vehicle then on fire. No doubt some of its munitions most likely cooked off as well in that explosion. You could see the Russians here attempting to put out the fire with a fire extinguisher there. It doesn't look like that worked too well. And you can see some other artillery incoming there, striking on the target again. It's really important here to kind of note just the shrapnel that's coming off of these explosions here is extremely deadly. You can see here just peppering the ground with shrapnel. No doubt if those Russian forces were still within that vehicle, they definitely most likely took some damage there. So there we have it again, footage of that Russian Arctic TOR M2DT anti-aircraft missile system being destroyed by the 406th Artillery Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. We have a few more posts that trickled in as I was giving these reports. I guess I'll go ahead and show those to you guys. First one comes from Yoroko Izo. It talks about Israel targeting Iranian arms flow to Ukraine. Netanyahu tells CNN. This is again being reported by the Jerusalem Post, I believe. It says here, Israel acts in ways that I will not itemize and here against Iran's weapons productions, which are used against Ukraine. Netanyahu said Israel has already been active in working to thwart Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons. But in his conversation with CNN, he said that such efforts were also directed towards preventing the flow of Iranian weapons to Russia. Another post here coming from Kirill. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, Kirill, but thank you so much for posting this in the Situation Room this evening. This comes from Israel Defense Forces Verified on Twitter. Talks about initial report. The IDF is currently striking in Gaza. Details to follow. So again, not related to Ukraine there, but some what seems to be breaking news there coming from Israel. So Kayuka actually posted one here. This is HMMWV in action near Bakhmut. Headphones beware. So again, we'll lower our volume here a little bit when we go to play this video here. Again, this is showing some HMMWV in action near Bakhmut. Not sure if that's artillery system here, Bichon. Let's take a look at the video. We'll kind of decipher from there. We'll piece together the pieces of the puzzle here firsthand. Okay, I see. So I think what we're seeing here again is a pocket of Ukrainian armed forces and a seems to be it's a Humvee. Okay, wasn't sure what you meant there for a second. So it's a Humvee here mounted with what seems to be possibly a 50 cal. Not sure. And we got a Ukrainian grenadier here with his RPG, setting that downrange. Definitely sounds like the burst of a 50 cal there. Let's take a look again at the beginning of the video. So yeah, these are definitely a group of Ukrainian armed forces here fighting in a village, most definitely in eastern Ukraine. This is near Bakhmut. It says the city of Kiev near Bakhmut. I didn't know there was a city named Kiev near Bakhmut. So we know it's somewhere near Bakhmut. But yeah, Humvees made it to Bakhmut, says Kayuka in the live chat. I wasn't sure what you meant by that. HMMWV. Humvee, okay. Yeah, Humvees made it to Bakhmut. That's interesting. So, yeah, I take it it's most likely a mounted 50 cal, sending fire, suppressive fire, and then you got the grenadier here with his fancy RPG, sending that downrange as well. Actually, Rot Lady just posted this this tweet from Special Kherson Cat. Humvee with Stinger anti-aircraft missiles on board 12. 12 marks are visible, meaning 12 hit targets by this crew. As said, such mobile systems are also part of Kiev's air defenses. So this is interesting. I actually had not seen this yet. So this is literally a Stinger anti-aircraft missile system mounted on a Humvee. You can see the what looks to be the Ukrainian coat of arms here used to mark the amount of kills they've gotten successfully with this system. I wouldn't mind just having one of these, to just, go hitting the trails and do a little bit of driving around in the, off-roading in one of these. That'd be pretty fun. I bet having these Humvees is a extremely important asset, especially ones with capabilities like the Stinger missile system. Extremely important, extremely valuable to those Ukrainian forces. So that about sums up our open source intelligence, not our open source intelligence, our community aggregated intelligence reports for Ukraine for about the past week or so. So we're now going to, first I got to close out of some of these tabs, and then we'll hop into our open source intelligence tools and take a look at what some of those have to show. So again, we have our go ahead and refresh this map as well. Okay, so we have our battle map here. We've taken a look at that already. So I guess what we'll do is we'll head over to our, actually first we'll look at our Eyes on Russia map, aka our heat map as we've been referring to it here on the show. So tonight for this map I lined up, this is everything from this past week or so. So from the 25th of January to the 1st of February is what we're seeing on screen here. We can see again concentrations of fighting in and around Bakhmut. This is not just fighting. This also includes strikes, like things like artillery bombardments, etc. Up by Kremenina, we see quite a bit of activity, and then down here in Donetsk, we see quite a bit of activity as well. But if you look down by Kherson now, what would have usually been almost devoid of any activity is now lighting up, especially in the Kherson region and along the Dnieper. We're seeing quite a bit of activity in these parts as well. So here's a post coming from, I believe, This was the 29th of January. One more Russia's attack on the hospital in Kherson. That's how a traumatological department looks like now. One nurse is injured. So again, a Russian strike here on a hospital in Kherson. Here's some video of a damaged apartment building
От диви,
here in, I believe this is near,
повилітало все. Ось,
I believe
бачиш,
this is also near Kherson, if I'm
воно
not. Yep, Town City,
вилітає.
Kherson. So again,
Все,
some
все.
damage to a residential apartment building here in Kherson.
Бачиш, а ось сюди прилетіло.
Here's a damaged city house of culture in Oleski that was damaged by Russian strikes. This goes back to the 29th of January here. Again, posted on Telegram. We have an explosion in the civilian area. This is near Novokhovka. Again, they have blurred the image for operational security, but you can see here the explosion there. At that apparently the type of area affected education or childcare. So suspected it was near a school or on a school here that this strike took place. I believe they blurred that out for operational security, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure exactly why they unblurred it. If they just, again, because you could just geolocate this building here and know exactly what's next to it. So there must have been something of significance for them to blur out the first part of that video there. Here's some renewed damage. I'm not going to open it up, but this is a report of renewed damage to a maternity hospital in Kherson. Again, from more Russian strikes there. Let's go ahead and condense it down just to today. So no events for today to report on our heat map, but don't be mistaken because we do have quite a few reports from today from our other map here, our live universal awareness map. So we're going to take a look at those reports now. We'll scroll back to about we'll go to about the 18-hour mark here. You know what? Second thought. We'll start here right above the 17-hour mark as we've covered most of those in our evening and morning reports from earlier. 17 hours ago, Czechia President-elect General Pavel says Ukraine morally and practically ready to join NATO once war is over. Sending planes to Ukraine is, quote, not taboo, but probably not helpful in time it would take to do it. Putin could end war today, but no sign Russia wants peace. 14 hours ago, Russian army conducted missile strikes at Enterprise in Sloviansk. On screen, you can see a image of some of the craters and damaged buildings there from this strike. That's in Sloviansk, where those strikes occurred. 13 hours ago, authorities warn of possible interruptions in water supply in Nikopol district because of critical low level of Kharkovsky water reservoir. Sorry, let's go ahead and take a look at... I thought we had a video or a post here. Yeah, so this is a video here, kind of hard to see. I guess Telegram doesn't let you, unless you're in the app, doesn't let you full screen these videos. So, but basically this video here is showing low levels on that water reservoir there. Sounds like there's also an air raid siren going off in the background. Could be wrong. Again, it says authorities warn of possible interruptions in water supply in Nikopol district because of the critical low level of the Kharkovsky water reservoir. 5 hours ago, Russian missile hit that residential apartment block in Kramatorsk, destroying it partially. Again, we showed you some footage from that destruction earlier. Here's an image showing that building destroyed. 4 hours ago, rescue operation continues in Kramatorsk after Russian missile strike. Up to 10 people could be under the rubble. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to take some time for those counts to be complete. It takes time for them to sift through the rubble there. In Kramatorsk 3 hours ago, 3 people killed. It's an update for the wounded and killed there at that apartment building. It said 20 wounded. I believe Kayuka's update had it at 21 wounded. It was a result of a Russian missile strike with the Iskander K missile against residential apartments block in Kramatorsk, in the city of Kramatorsk. So again, that about concludes our universal awareness map updates. We'll head over to our aircraft map here, and I'll show you a little bit about what's going on in Ukraine's airspace for this evening. So again, for those of you that don't know, since the start of the full-scale invasion, commercial aircraft over Ukraine have pretty much been null and void. As again, it's basically a no-fly zone for commercial aircraft, that is, in and around Ukraine, even in some areas of the Black Sea here. Tonight on radar, we're tracking a few military aircraft. We have a RCH-150, it's a C-17 from the United States. It's been cruising down from Europe. I believe it took off in near Letziburg. I'm not sure the city of origin here. Oh, Ramstein. So it took off at Ramstein here, and is heading down. I don't know exactly where its destination is. It's a Boeing C-17A Globemaster III. Again, that's a United States military aircraft. We also have fresh on the radars an RCH-195, also a C-17A Globemaster III from the United States military. Spotted on radar just a few hours ago here over the water. And again, we're going to have to keep an eye on that destination. And we also have a Hungarian military FA7X up in the air this evening. Not exactly sure if that's a VIP flight or maybe reconnaissance. It's kind of hard to know. From the looks of it, it looks like it's most likely some kind of transport flight. Most likely personnel. If we head over to our flight radar and give it a little bit of a fresh refresh here, we'll be able to take a look at our top tracked flights for this evening. Again, before I get into that, you can see down here, as usual, our commercial flights kind of sticking to that same corridor along the bottom of the Black Sea here. You don't see too many flights heading in and around Crimea or Ukrainian territory. Top tracked flight for this evening is UA 5311 United Express, currently from Houston to Boise, is currently the number one tracked. Interesting, I'm not sure what that flight is about. Talon 75 of the United States Army. It's a Skrilersky UH-60M Blackhawk. Is spotted in the western United States in Idaho, it looks like. And we have a few others here listed this evening. None are of notoriety, except these military aircraft here, which we saw on screen. It looks like that, yeah. So that other Globemaster just popped off the radar. So we've lost track on that other Globemaster, and we've lost track on that one as well. So just within the time of me talking here, we lost track on both of those radar. Actually, hold on. I was just... hold on. Let's just refresh here. There we go. Okay. All right. So... there we go. Yeah, so we still have that one Globemaster and the FA7X. But our third Globemaster I had been tracking for out of Ramstein, that one disappeared. Also have a little German military aircraft there on radar tonight as well. Over the past few days to week, we've seen a few spottings of our Northrop Grumman RQ-9 Global Hawk unmanned reconnaissance drones, namely the Forte 10, Forte 11. We've seen them frequenting both along the Baltic states here, Baltic nations, as well as over the Black Sea. Typical behavior, keeping an eye on the Russian naval vessels here, Russian activity around Crimea, as well as Belarusian territory. So we're going to continue to see that as this war progresses. Other than that, there hasn't been too much notable activity by U.S. military aircraft, other than your standard transportation flights for personnel, equipment, etc. So, moving on from there, I'll talk a little bit about our naval situation here. Let's go over to our marine traffic maps. So again, traffic is pretty much business as usual in the Black Sea. Over the past week, we've seen more vessels frequenting these kind of northern areas of the Black Sea. We got a few vessels here. Destination Istanbul, destination Trieste here. Again, I'm pretty sure these are cargo vessels, if I'm not mistaken. some of these positions are a little outdated, but it does look like, I mean, this is as recent as 24 hours. This is what the commercial vessel situation looks like in the Black Sea. If I go ahead, I'm going to check. Yep, so we do have a few updates from our naval radar channel on the Discord here. So this comes from, and again, this isn't Ukraine related, but this comes from Dropped Out Dev on the Discord server in the Naval Radar channel. Talks about Iranian warships dock in Brazil on their way to Panama despite U.S. sanctions. On the 28th of January, Iranian Navy ships were allowed to dock in Brazil despite being under U.S. sanctions. This means the ships can travel to Panama Canal without hassle. Earlier, Panama deregistered Iranian ships to prevent them from carrying oil to the U.S. Iran downplayed it as a major issue, saying they would ship oil in their vessels. Since then, the U.S. has been monitoring Iran's Panama transit with a hawk's eye, especially the country's military presence. So, to kind of update on everybody and why we've been talking so much about Iran over the past few days, I guess it probably is a good time for us to hop into the little bit of Iran news that I have for you. And we'll start with this post here. Let me get back to this screen here. So earlier this week, Iran had a pretty eventful night in which Israel launched drone attacks on an Iranian military facility. While the target's purpose is unclear, the city of Isfahan is a major center of Iranian missile production, research, and development. From Tel Aviv, a drone attack on an Iranian military facility that resulted in a large explosion in the center city of Isfahan on Saturday was the work of the Mossad, Israel's premier intelligence agency, according to senior intelligence officials who are familiar with the dialogue between Israel and the United States about the incident. The night that it occurred, my speculation was that it was Israeli-backed Kurdish militants that had undertaken the strikes. However, it does look now that it was the Israelis themselves, namely Mossad, again, which is Israel's intelligence service, their intelligence agency there in Israel. The facility's purpose was not clear, and neither was how much damage the strike caused. But Isfahan is a major center of missile production, research and development for Iran, including the assembly of many of Shahab medium-range missiles, which can reach Israel and beyond. Weeks ago, American officials publicly identified Iran as the primary supplier of drones to Russia for use in the war in Ukraine, and they said they believed Russia was also trying to obtain Iranian missiles to use in the conflict. But U.S. officials said they believed the strike was prompted by Israel's concerns about its own security, not the potential for missile exports. The strike came just as Secretary of State Anthony J. Blinken was beginning a visit to Israel, his first since Benjamin Netanyahu had returned to office as Prime Minister. The director of the Central Intelligence Agency, William J. Burns, visited Israel last week, though it is not clear anything about the operation in Isfahan was discussed. American officials quickly sent out word on Sunday morning that the United States was not responsible for the attack. One official confirmed that it had been conducted by Israel, but did not have details about the target. Sometimes Israel gives the United States advance warning of an attack or informs American officials as an operation is being launched. It is unclear what happened in this case. Isfahan is the site of 4 small nuclear research facilities, all supplied by China many years ago, but the facility was struck on Saturday. The facility that was struck on Saturday was in the middle of the city and did not appear to be nuclear related. So again, we got to enable our ads here. Just give me 1 second here so we can get that prompt out of the way. This is coming from Fox News, a warning sign. Iran's military reportedly sending warships to Brazil and Panama Canal in a challenge to the U.S. Reading a little bit from this article here, it says the United States is tracking warlike announcement by Iran's regime that it deployed 2 military ships to Brazil and are also headed for the Panama Canal, where Tehran declared it will establish a military presence. A U.S. State Department spokesperson told Fox News Digital on Tuesday, "We are aware of these claims by Iran's Navy. We will continue to monitor Iran's attempts to have a military presence in the Western Hemisphere." The Iranian regime-controlled news outlet Tehran Times reported Saturday that Iran's 86th flotilla warships 86th flotilla warships is now sailing along the western shores of Latin America, the Navy's second-in-command had said. In another post here, again coming from Fox News, which I'm going to have to, again, enable ads for. Apologies for that. It says U.S. forces intercept thousands of assault rifles, ammo, anti-tank missiles from Iran. It says here the U.S. has seized thousands of rifles and nearly 24 anti-tank missiles originating from Iran and transported via shipping routes. U.S. CENTCOM reported Tuesday that CENTCOM officials, in cooperation with the international naval partners, successfully intercepted the transport of over 3,000 rifles from Iran to Yemen. Alongside the rifles, authorities recovered nearly 600,000 rounds of ammunition and 23 anti-tank guided missiles. You can actually see a picture here of those 3,000 rifles. Quite a few of them, and I believe that's some missile stockpile up there as well, which we are seeing. Along with this report, there's a video from Fox News here talking about the U.S. sending a warning to Iran with B-52 bomber flights. Let's take a look at that now.
No man's land.
And of course, we get interrupted with a ad here, so bear with me here, guys.
A clear warning to Iran. A B-52 bomber task force flies over the region. More than a dozen countries taking part in this mission. U.S. officials say that they are seeing an increased threat from Iran to its neighbors as Tehran battles freedom fighters at home. Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin reporting live from the Pentagon today. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Martha. Well, the concern right now is that as protests in Iran like these that have continued nonstop since September 24th, that began as a protest against the death of a young woman who refused to wear her headscarf and has now turned into an uprising against the ruling mullahs. As those protests continue, U.S. officials worry Iran could try to deflect from the protests by carrying out military activities that bait the U.S. into a military response. That's why U.S. Central Command, joined by 13 partner countries, flew B-52 bombers across the Middle East Friday to send a message to Iran to halt its belligerent actions. This all comes as Iran's Revolutionary Guards say it has built a hypersonic ballistic missile. General Eric Kurilla issued the following statement. CENTCOM has the ability to quickly put a significant amount of combat power in the air alongside our partners. We can do the same on the ground and at sea to meet any challenge decisively. French President Emmanuel Macron met with several exiled Iranian activists and, in the strongest statement yet from a Western leader, called the protests a revolution, as an Iranian court sentenced to death one of the protesters for the first time today. The family of another prominent detainee, activist Hossein Ranaghi, taken to a hospital from Evin prison in Tehran, where both his legs were broken, asked protesters to encircle the hospital where he was taken, believing his life was in danger. They did that last night. The Biden administration has been relatively quiet, Martha, about supporting the protesters, but just signed off on extending security for former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and his Iran envoy Brian Hook, among others, who face death threats from Iranian hit squads seeking revenge for the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Martha?
A lot going on. Jennifer, thank you very much.
So there we have it. Again, some increase in activity there from Iran, significant over the past week or so here. Again, we've not just seen those attacks carried out in Iran. We've seen activity from Iranian naval vessels. We've seen shows of force by the U.S. We also saw a massive earthquake on Iran's border earlier this week as well, which is the same night that those drone attacks occurred. So it's been a very, you got protests also occurring in Iran as well. There's some activity with the Kurdish militants there in Iran as well. So it's all kind of ramping up there. It's been kind of a toxic and very volatile situation there, building up in Iran over the past week or so. I saw Kayuka talking about the Wagner recruitment video. Send it my way, actually, and I will play that for us right now. There we go. Thank you. He was already on top of that. So again, this next video here comes from Kayuka. This is actually a recruitment video for Wagner the Wagner
years in the army.
For the Wagner PMC private military corporation. It says here, a video appeared online that is allegedly recruiting U.S. Army veterans into the Wagner group. The video's authenticity has not been verified, but it's a good watch. Let's take a look at this alleged recruitment video.
You were a hero to your country, giving your best years in the army. You dreamed of defeating evil. You dreamed of doing much to make America great again. But in reality, you saw criminal others, the destruction of nations, the death of civilians, and all for the will of a bunch of families who thought they were earthly gods, deciding who would live under their rule and who would be destroyed. You began to realize that this is the side of evil. This is not the America the founding fathers dreamed of. It has become...
So really quickly, just to pause, just to reiterate, this is a alleged recruitment video for the Wagner PMC, for the Russian mercenary group Wagner. I see a few people. Ray's actually had mentioned. I heard this video is fan-made propaganda. It does look to be a little bit low on the production value scale, so to speak. He says, I hate to say fan-made propaganda, but it's true. Yeah. So I could definitely see this. However, either way, it's an interesting watch.
Become the focus of the evil that is destroying the whole world. And today, the only country fighting this evil is Russia.
And then the bass drops. The only country fighting this evil is Russia, and bass drop. I could just see them in the editing room trying to piece this one together.
Fighting this evil is Russia.
Somebody asks what language is the subtitles. I believe they're Russian. Could be Ukrainian, but it's hard to tell. I believe it's Russian though.
If you're a true patriot of the very future great America, join the ranks of the warriors of Russia. Help defeat evil, or it will be too late for everyone.
And then, of course, they show I believe this is from a movie here. I don't remember which movie, but a clip of a nuke going off in a city. Of course, they have to end off with that.
Or it will be too late for everyone.
So again, interesting how they try to frame these, how they're trying to frame the war, and as this kind of existential crisis, not just for Russia but for the whole world, and they're trying to defeat this evil, so to speak. Oh, you guys said Terminator 2? That's what I thought. Yeah. So that clip of the nuke was from Terminator 2: Judgment Day. Right on. I knew I'd seen that somewhere before, but I wasn't gonna make any guesses on it. Rakasan says this video, as a veteran, is nauseating. I think for everybody, it's quite nauseating. Production value wasn't very high on that. Voice actor, he had a decent voice, but definitely tells a pretty thick. Sounded like he had a thick Russian accent. Anyway, guys, moving on from Ukraine and from Iran, we're going to talk a little bit about China and. Once again, Fox with the ad block prompt here. We're going to talk about China and Taiwan. Did I already go over this one? I did. We'll start with this one here, coming from AP News. This was posted, I believe, earlier today. Where's the date on this one? believe. Oh, this was yesterday. Okay, so Taiwan activates defenses in response to China incursions. Taiwan scrambled fighter jets, put its navy on alert, and activated missile systems in response to nearby operations by 34 Chinese military aircraft and 9 warships that are part of Beijing's strategy to unsettle and intimidate the self-governing island democracy. The large-scale Chinese deployment came as Beijing increases preparations for a potential blockade or military action against Taiwan that have stirred increasing concern among military leaders, diplomats, and elected officials in the U.S. Taiwan's key ally. In a memo last month, U.S. Air Force Gen Mike Minihan had instructed officers to be prepared for a U.S.-China conflict over Taiwan in 2025. As head of the Air Mobility Command, Minihan has a key understanding of the Chinese military, and his personal remarks echo calls in the U.S. for heightened preparations. Taiwan's defense ministry said 20 Chinese aircraft on Tuesday crossed the central line in the Taiwan Strait that has long been an unofficial buffer zone between the sides, which separated during the Civil War in 1949. China claims the island republic as its own territory to be taken by force if necessary, while the vast majority of Taiwanese are opposed to coming under the control of China's authoritarian Communist Party. Next post here from the Global Times talks about the People's Liberation Army of China ramps up drills around Taiwan amid McCarthy's island visit hype. Spoke about this last week in our last week's Intel report. Brian Rosenberger, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. I just thought I'd read your comment here. It says, I hear you as a Marine Corps vet. That video is sickening. Thank you so much, Brian, for tuning in tonight. Thank you for your service, and glad to have you. It's always glad to see some Marines tuning into the live chat here. Again, I'll read this article here. Defense authorities on the island of Taiwan on Wednesday reported intense warplane and warship activities conducted by the Chinese People's Liberation Army, also known as the PLA, around the island over the previous day amid media reports saying that U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy might visit the island in the springtime. This could be seen as a warning to McCarthy that he should not follow his predecessor Nancy Pelosi's suit in provocatively interfering in China's internal affairs, said analysts. Some 34 PLA aircraft and 9 PLA vessels have been detected around the island of Taiwan by Wednesday morning in the previous 24 hours, with 20 of the aircraft, including fighter jets, drones, and special mission aircraft, crossing the so-called median line and entering the island's self-proclaimed Southwest Air Defense Identification Zone. The island's defense authority said in a statement on Wednesday. The PLA aircraft crossed the so-called median line from 12 locations, marking the highest number ever, media on the island reported. It is possible that the PLA's activities were related to reports saying that McCarthy would visit the island soon, said media on the island. The PLA has already made patrols and exercises around the island of Taiwan a daily routine, and it is normal that fewer forces are deployed in one day. And more forces are deployed in another day, a Beijing-based military expert told the Global Times on condition of anonymity on Wednesday. But McCarthy, together with all external interference and Taiwan independence forces, should consider the PLA's actions as a warning, because if McCarthy does visit the island in a provocative move, the PLA is bound to respond resolutely, the expert said. When then House Speaker Pelosi landed in Taiwan in August of 2022, the PLA held unprecedentedly large-scale exercises surrounding the island from 6 directions and fired conventional ballistic missiles across the island for the first time. I know we covered that when that occurred last August when Pelosi went to visit Taiwan. We could see a similar situation unfold, possibly even an escalated version of what we saw last August unfold if McCarthy does make that visit, does make that trip to China. Our next post here says dozens of Chinese military planes, vessels detected in Taiwan waters and airspace. Again, more of the same stuff which I was just mentioning there. The Ministry of National Defense of Taiwan said 34 Chinese military aircraft and 9 naval vessels were detected near the island nation around 3 a.m. Let's go ahead here and open up. This is the actual Ministry of Defense ROC Twitter page for Taiwan. So this is where they publish these updates here. As of 1 hour ago, guys, so as of me starting this live report this evening, the Chinese were making incursions into Taiwanese airspace. So 1 hour ago here, it says 17 of the detected aircraft had crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait and entered Taiwan's southwest air defense identification zone. Flight paths as illustrated. You can see here 23 PLA aircraft and 4 PLA Navy vessels around Taiwan were detected by 6 a.m. UTC today. ROC Armed Forces have monitored the situation and tasked CAP aircraft, Navy vessels, and land-based missile systems to respond to these activities. And you can see here, going back into yesterday, the same stuff as well. It was 34 PLA aircraft yesterday. So these larger groupings is what's different. You know, of course, it went from weekly incursions to now we're having daily incursions over the past month or so. And what's even more interesting is over the past week or so, we've started to see large flotillas of naval vessels and large groupings of PLA aircraft in the air as well. So usually, you know, it's bursts of 5 to 10, but now we're seeing 20 and 30 at a time. And so again, kind of you could tell it definitely a ramping up here in tensions in the South Pacific. So scrolling all the way back here, you can see just a daily occurrence of this. See, most of the time it's 3 PLA aircraft, you know, or you see 8 PLA aircraft, etc. You know, 2, 7, 1, 2, right? Okay, but you scroll up here to our latest ones, and you got 20, 34, 23, 17. So they've increased the numbers of these aircraft, of these naval vessels that are again crossing in to Taiwanese airspace and territory. So that about concludes our Situation Room weekly intel report for tonight. I'm now going to switch over to a little bit of a questions and answers, a little bit of a Q&A here in the live chat. So if any of you have posted any questions or made any comments over the course of tonight's live stream, go ahead and you can post those off in the live chat now. I'll read your comments. I'll read your questions. If you posted one earlier in the stream and I didn't catch it, you can repost your question now in the live chat, and we'll go ahead and I'll read those off to you guys and answer any questions. Before we get into that, though, however, I'm going to end off our live stream poll for this evening. I'll go ahead and end that now, if my browser will respond here. 1 second. Okay, so I'll go ahead and end the poll. Tonight's poll, the question was, do you think Russian forces will take the city of Bakhmut? If so, how long will it take them? 39% of you says no, they will not take the city. So about 39%. This is the first poll I've had where it's like really all over the place. You know, it's pretty split. It's not as much of a majority as we usually see here. Of course, it was more than just a 2-answer yes or no poll, which I'm gonna start doing more of these because I think they're a little bit more insightful, so to speak. About 39% of you think that the Russians will not be able to take Bakhmut. 26% of you think it will take about a month for the Russian forces, a month from now, for them to take the city of Bakhmut. 22% said about a week, and 11% of you said 3 days. In the next 3 days, they will have the city of Bakhmut under Russian control. So again, it's going to take some time for us to see what occurs there in the east of Ukraine. But again, it's kind of interesting taking a look at the poll. The majority of you, I guess, think that Russia will not be able to take that city of Bakhmut. So far, I would see how you can see that over the past few months here. They've really held that territory well. The Russians have started to make key gains, though, in that area, and that's something that we have to consider. Now, if the Ukrainians are able to pull off a successful counteroffensive in the region, break some of those Russian lines that are trying to reach further westward and circle those Ukrainian troops, the Russian capture of Bakhmut might fail. So, again, it's only time will tell on that. Jake Miller, thank you so much for posting the Kyiv weather report. Or sorry, it was for Kharkiv. You posted that weather report. I actually didn't read it off. Um, I know it said there was a chance of snow. It says here, Jake Miller said snow had stopped in Kharkiv. They have around 2 inches of snow right now, so they're getting some snow in the east of the country there. Kender, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Glad to see you. Miss Tiger Eye, thank you so much for continuing to support us with your moderator actions there in the live chat as well. Rakasan, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Itchy the Killer says this war is making everyone spicy. I think, yeah, I could agree with that. You look what's going on in China. Look what's going on in Iran. All over the place, things are starting to heat up a little bit geopolitically. So, yeah, you could definitely say that the war is indeed making everyone a little spicy. Liam asks, could economic pressure because of deindustrialization by green policies in Europe lead to a fracturing and then maybe neutrality towards Russia by Europe? We've seen a little bit of that. I mean, not just we've seen hints of that. You know what I mean? With the energy situation. Even in the way that we conduct like these aid packages, even in the way that European countries have conducted aid packages to Ukraine, we've seen some hints of that. Where like, they don't want to escalate things any further. They don't want to, further alienize Russian fuel exports from them, and so I don't think it'll ever go that far. Like leading to a full-on division. I think Europe is unified, for the most part, unified in aid of Ukraine, right? In support of Ukraine, I should say. I don't think we'll ever see a quote fracturing of those views, but or even really neutrality towards Russia by Europe. But again, only time will tell. Dirk Matthew says, what do you think of the marker UGVs rolling out? I actually haven't looked into them too much. I know there's a lot of different both manned and unmanned systems heading over to Ukraine. I've definitely heard of the UGVs, the marker UGVs. It all depends on how many they're going to get. Like, how many will Russia send in to Ukraine? How many will those forces on the ground get? Again, I'm pretty sure that system is still in its testing phases. It's not fully, vetted in combat yet, and so it's kind of hard to say. Like, will electronic warfare systems knock those things completely out of, out of the game, so to speak? How will those electronic warfare systems? Because we've seen like drones be severely affected by things like jamming and stuff like that, and drone countermeasures, etc. So it depends on how will those electronic countermeasures have an effect on those UGVs, if any, and how will the Russian forces put them to use, and how many will they get if they do get any? Again, a lot of that is usually propaganda from the Russian side. I have seen videos as of late of those the Terminator systems being used by the Russian forces to some success in Ukraine, but they're limited in numbers. And again, it's kind of hard to tell really what the true scope of things like that are at this time. Javon JW says, where will Iran dock its ships with? Will Brazil allow them? I am confused. I don't exactly know, so I haven't looked into that much. In fact, the Brazil-Panama news is pretty fresh in my mind. I just heard about that in the past 24 hours, so I'm still kind of looking into that. Again, I'm gonna have to look into that more before I can give you an accurate assessment. What I do know though is that they have quote plans, and they've made statements that they want to have a military presence in Latin America. I don't see that as something that the U.S. would allow, and I'm not sure if that's even something that Iran could sustain. This might just be more of a geopolitical move than anything. However, again, it's something I'm going to need to look into further. Fallen Rays says Nemico, will we get Latric Pancaster back? Maybe at some point we'll have a return of the avatars and some of the hijinks by our favorite neighborhood propagandist, Latric Pancaster, but no plans for that in the short term. But it could change. Miss Tiger Eye points out, she says, welcome, Daniel. Any mass media reports should be taken with a grain of salt. At least that's my opinion. And I try to state that with everything that we show on here. Everything you see should be taken with a grain of salt. Even some of the open source intelligence, information that we get from municipal sources should be taken with a grain of salt until it's further verified and vetted by other parties. Kendor asks to Fallen Rays, that dude's still chilling in Russia. Patrick Lancaster has actually been posting quite a few videos lately from Ukraine. I think he took a break for a while and went and covered some other things going on, but he's back in Ukraine, shilling the Russian propaganda, and he's back at his old hijinks, so to speak. I haven't covered him at all in recent months, and I probably won't anytime in the future unless there's something of significance to show there. But it is always a really excellent example of the Russian propaganda machine looking at air quotes, independent journalists like himself. Speedy Squirrel says, thanks, Nemico, for the report. Amazing as usual. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, Speedy Squirrel. Jake Miller says, snowing has stopped in Kyiv about an inch and is currently light raining. Sounds like a mess there to be dealing with. Ice and rain, that's never fun. Michelle Welch says, wonder if Ukraine gets ice storms like we do. Most definitely they get ice storms. Yeah, especially in the south when it gets cold along the Black Sea, I would imagine, freezing spray and stuff, they probably have a good amount of ice down there. But I mean, across the country, I mean, as Jake just said, they had snow and now rain. If the temperatures dip, that can always freeze. I almost guarantee that they have ice storms. Kendra says, I know it's too cold to be stomping around, living outside. This nonsense needs to stop. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only begin to imagine the struggle that a lot of those Ukrainian defenders are going through as they're in those trenches. It harkens right back to like World War I. People freezing to death in trenches, in the mud, in the rain. It's definitely not optimal, nobody should be having to be submitted to that along with active combat. It can be a lot to handle, and especially during the winter months when the temperatures dip down. I mean, there's been a lot of reports of soldiers on both sides of the conflict freezing to death at their posts. So, and I mean, not just soldiers, civilians as well have been freezing to death in their homes, with lack of power, lack of heating fuel, etc. The account says Nasha should interview Dasha on the stream one day. If you're referring to Mehmet's cat, I think that is an excellent idea. I'm not sure how much insightful information we would get out of an interview, but I think that would be hilarious nonetheless. Michelle Welch says, yes, any word on Dasha? Last I heard, Dasha was still in Poland living with the family that rescued her and is still there, I'm pretty sure, to this day. Miss Tiger Eye asks, what is your vote for the poll? Sorry if I missed this. I actually did not cast a vote for the poll. My honest assessment is that Russia will most likely take Bakhmut probably within the next month or two. I don't see it happening in the next week or so, but it's kind of hard to tell. There has been some reports of them making gains around Bakhmut, so it could start. It could start to progress more rapidly. Let's just say that over the coming days. But but I would estimate probably within the next month or two, unless Ukraine can again launch some kind of significant counteroffensive to break those Russian lines. They may end up being surrounded by Russian forces, and they'll be choked off from supplies and reinforcements, etc. Fallen Rays says, great reports. Thanks for the update and have a great evening. Glory to Ukraine. Shake the Hand says, are there any reports of soldiers on skis? That's like not sure if it was Finland or Sweden. Who are the military? I'm not sure which military in World War II used to do patrols on skis. I'm sure it's still done to this day, but I haven't heard any reports about that being done in Ukraine. But that would be interesting to look into. Liam asks, if the war goes hot, what do you think the first actions will be? Satellites being knocked out, jamming nukes maybe? How do you think it will unfold? Probably communications, yeah. Communications infrastructure would be probably one of the first things to go. You might see limited use of nukes, possibly, however, unlikely. You could see high-altitude airbursts used for like an EMP, that could be. But again, I don't see the war going hot anytime soon. At least I hope. It's something that you can't rule out as a possibility, but you don't want to feed into the fear mongering of it as well. You kind of want to keep a rational head, and we want to try to make all attempts to de-escalate rather than to escalate. De-escalation through deterrence is kind of the key word going forward here. Kitty Grundy says there an update on Ukraine preparing for an offensive for spring. I talked a little bit about that on tonight's report. They are preparing for a spring offensive. I should say multiple separate spring counter offensives, mostly in the south of the country, not so much in the east, but mostly in the south of the country. There's been signs of them possibly looking to move across the Dnieper. And to take back some of those areas the Russians have control over. There's also been signs of the Russians looking to launch a offensive, a renewed offensive, possibly later this month in the south of the country. Maybe move across the to the West Bank, maybe try to capture some territory. Again, it's only time will tell. It's really hard. Things are kind of in this tit for tat, back and forth situation right now. It's kind of hard to tell where things are heading. So with that, guys, ends tonight's weekly Intel report. Again, thank you to everybody that stopped by this evening and tuned in for tonight's live report. If you haven't already, make sure to like this stream. If you're watching this as a video, of course, these streams are live, posted to Twitch and YouTube. Once they're done, I upload them as a separate video, and then over the course of the week, we upload condensed versions of said video, as well as shorts and other snippets from this. So for those that missed it, or for those that didn't watch the entirety of it, you will find videos and shorts and other condensed versions of this on the channel over the course of the week. Make sure to like that the video. If you're watching this as a video, hit the like button. It's super helpful. Make sure to subscribe. It's the only way to support the channel. It's the best way to support the channel. Only way to get involved in our live stream chats during the live streams. Comment, share. It's the best way to get this information in the hands of more people, is to share these live streams, share these reports. For those of you following along on Twitch, for anybody that subscribed on Twitch or followed along on Twitch this evening, thank you guys so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for following and for tuning in over there on Twitch. For any of you guys that subscribed here on YouTube, if you did subscribe, thank you so much for subscribing to the channel this evening. Miss Tiger Eye says, wait, last question. Did we make the Sign My Rocket? Yes, so we did complete the $1,000 goal of the Sign My Rocket fundraiser this evening. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to go ahead and get a final count put in. I'll probably get that done tomorrow. I'll get a final count put in, and we'll post it on the Discord server. And then from there, we got to wait for... because again, all of the money that comes from the super chats, YouTube takes like a cut. I'm not sure if it's like 20 or 30% cut from YouTube. So I gotta make sure to get a final count on that, and then we have to wait for YouTube to get that money processed and stuff, and then we'll go ahead and we're gonna get that sent over to Sign My Rocket, and we'll put the request in for that video. Basically, we're getting a 155 millimeter artillery round with a message written on it. In fact, I can actually show you guys what it will look like here. We'll bring up signmyrocket.com here, and so it'll look something like this here. So we'll have a video. So a video here, and it'll have, you know, oops. So it'll have a message here. So it'll say something like, you know, subscribe to Nemico Network, or Nemico Network sends its regards to the Russian occupiers, or something like that. I'm probably going to do we'll do a vote. We'll probably put it to a vote as to what we should say. I'm going to come up with like a few different options, and we'll put it to a community poll vote as to what the message should be that goes on our 155 millimeter shell. So it'll look a little different than this. This is an M77, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure why. Oh yeah. So this is an M77 howitzer firing the 155 millimeter round. So the video is going to look a little different than this. It'll show, you know, first the clip of the shell on the ground with the message written on it. They'll load it into the artillery piece, and then we're also going to try to get them to read off, like from a card, a special message from the channel. And then, of course, they'll show the round being fired downrange onto Russian forces, which will look something like any minute now. Okay, so he decided. I like how he's just taking a seat on the rounds. That's savage. You can see here, and they're about to fire it, and there they send it down range. I'm going to send him a message. I'm going to see if I can get like our video just kind of done a little bit differently, but we'll see. Whatever they can do, I'll be happy with. As long as we get a nice message written on a 155 millimeter shell and sent down range and get a cool video of it. I heard we can also get a video of, like, from a drone. If they have a recon drone in the air, they'll get like a clip of the shell impacting its target. So we're going to try to do that as well. But anyway, the plan is I'll upload that as a standalone video to the channel, but we'll also use it as part of the intro for the live streams as well. Miss Tiger Eye says, "Let's ship Pocket Frog and have them strap him to it. He has practice on fireworks." That is very true. We could do that. An M777, yes. Yeah, so it'll be definitely interesting to get that video back and to take a look at how that turns out. For those of you that haven't yet joined our Discord server, you can find a link to that in the description below this video or this live stream, depending on how you're watching this. It's the best way to join our community and to get updates and information on not just what's going on with the channel, but what's going on in Ukraine and the rest of the world as well. It's an excellent resource for information. Stay tuned for next week's live report every Wednesday, at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do a Intel live report, a weekly recap of everything that's been going on in the global security realm. So make sure to tune in next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our next weekly report. I think that's about it. I think that about sums up everything for this evening. If I missed anything, guys, send me a message. You can always PM me on Discord. You can always send me an email. I love reading your guys' emails. I read every comment. I read every message that's sent my way. Sometimes I get bombarded with them, so it takes me a little bit of time to get back to people, so bear with me. But to everybody that tuned in this evening, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. Until next time, you are watching Nemico Network.
Something that will change our daily lives, that will change will be the most beautiful day.